won't go. They won't leave despite that. So that was a challenge.
Adams says there is still tons of debris left over from Hurricane Helene, which hit Florida's west coast only 2 weeks ago.
Nova Scotia Power crews are driving to Tampa, Florida to help in advance of Hurricane Milton. And for more on this, we're joined by NSP's Matt Drover. So you folks got a call for assistance. Who was that from?
So it came directly from the power companies in Florida, in Tampa directly. So they called on Sunday night looking for assistance because, as you said, Hurricane Milton is going to be a significant storm impacting the entire state. So we sent about 35 people down to help out.
And what are they expecting to see once they get there?
So really, they're expecting a pretty significant windstorm. So the hurricane winds will have a big impact on the entire state, as well as significant storm surge. So our crews will be really focused on taking direction from the power companies, where to go, who to help out, and get power back on as quickly as they can.
When do they expect to arrive?
So they're driving right now. So they left yesterday afternoon, and they should be there about Wednesday evening, Thursday morning.
And they won't obviously go in the path of the hurricane. They wait till it's over?
Yeah, that's right. So they'll be stationed just outside of Florida, probably on the border with Georgia. They'll stay there until the hurricane winds are over. Once the storm has passed through, then they'll move into Florida and be told directly where to go.
And talk to me a bit about the work that they will be doing.
Yeah, so they'll be very focused on removing trees, really focused on repairing power poles, power lines, things that have been damaged by those hurricane force winds. They'll be directed where to go, make those repairs, and then get power back on quickly.
And I imagine there's a shortage of power crews given that Florida just experienced Hurricane Helene. How does that all factor in?
Absolutely. Hurricane Helene just impacted Florida and Georgia and the Carolinas just over a week ago. So there are many crews still working on that restoration, which is why they reached all the way to us. They need as much help as they can get. And like we do, when we have big storms, they ask for our help, and now we're able to help them out.
On the ground, what are some of the challenges they have to deal with? I know there'll be a lot of water and obviously downed lines. What do they have to watch out for?
Yeah, so safety is the number one importance. So first of all, they're looking at the winds. Once winds are below 80 kilometers an hour, then they can put their buckets up in the air to make repairs. They'll be removing trees. They'll be navigating around flooding, really focused on any damage that has occurred to Tampa's power equipment, making those repairs and getting power back on.
So Tampa is sort of the central point where they'll be working, even though it's going to be hitting on that coast quite a bit.
Yeah, that's right. It looks like the entire coast will be hit, but probably landfall will be directly in the Tampa Bay area. So that's where our crews will be. That's where they need the most help at this point.
So they get put up in hotels and just wait till the storm hits, huh?
Pretty much, yeah. They'll be in the hotel waiting until the storm has passed and it's safe to get out there and restore power. As soon as they get the call to move in, they'll move in at that point.
Any idea how long they might be down there?
We don't actually know at this point. So until the storm has gone through and they've assessed the damage and they understand how big that impact is, we don't know how long they'll need us, but we'll stay as long as they do need our help. And then once they're ready, they'll send us home from there.
Do you send additional crews, or is this what we can spare as a province?
It's pretty much what we can spare right now. 35 people, which includes power line technicians, some logistics folks, mechanics, some safety personnel. That team is really what we could send at this point.
All right. Well, Matt, thanks for walking us through it. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And of course, watching all this is Ryan Snoddon as well.
Yes, so you're watching that. You're also watching the rain come in here, thankfully not as extreme.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, one eye on Milton, as you said, and we'll circle back to that storm with the main forecast coming up in a few minutes, and we'll do a deeper dive. But do want to talk about what's going on here locally. And again, a wet day with the periods of rain that have been tracking from west to east across the province. And of course, showers ahead of the main line, but it is that main line that will really rain itself out this evening into the early overnight. By Wednesday morning, that is kicked out. West to northwest flow in the wake of that system, especially across Cape Breton. Tomorrow feeling a little more of a northwest wind, and then a bit of a southwest wind punching in to the southwest of the province. No Wednesday afternoon, pretty nice, but we will see that chance of a shower developing for the Tri-County area, the Valley, into the South Shore tomorrow afternoon. Halifax, the risk of a shower tomorrow evening, but tomorrow itself dry. So Cape Breton will see the showers clear. And really what we're going to be seeing over the next few days is just a little bit of unsettled weather as this upper level low spins around. We've got some showers and temperatures generally seasonal, feeling a bit cool. It is October. We'll break it down with your full 7-day coming up.
All right, thanks.
Looking forward. Thanks very much, Ryan. Well, Nova Scotia is one of the few provinces still using a paper-based system for people's health records, but it's working to change that. The province signed a multi-million-dollar deal last year to transition to electronic health records. Today, officials gave an update on that work to a committee of the legislature. Taryn Grant reports.
Manila folders. They're a familiar sight in any doctor's office or hospital, but probably not for much longer. Health authority officials say the IWK will be the first healthcare setting in Nova Scotia to go digital, starting next summer.
We've started with the IWK because the IWK is contained, it's a little smaller, we're able to do everything across the board in a neater, smaller, more manageable package. And as you can appreciate, of course, this is a gargantuan task, a multi-year task, and so we want to make sure that it's kicked off right, that we get some good momentum and go from there.
This project has been many years in the making. Digitizing health records was pitched by the Liberal government in 2015. But it didn't go very far until last year, when the Tory government signed a $365 million deal with a tech company called Oracle Cerner. At that time, the rollout was expected to start next spring. The latest timeline pushes it back about 6 months.
I would say it's not a delay at all. It's actually a smart listening to make sure that we've listened, we learn from our clinicians, we're standardizing our practice, which is extremely complex. It's extremely complex.
Once the Women's and Children's Hospital gets electronic records, other sites around Halifax will follow suit. Every healthcare setting across Nova Scotia is supposed to go digital by the fall of 2026. The head of the College of Physicians and Surgeons says doctors are looking forward to it.
I can tell you they're also eager to have one patient, one record. It'll make the practice of medicine easier and better.
He says electronic records make healthcare more consistent, more efficient, and safer. But in the meantime, paper will have to do. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
Nova Scotia is launching a new medical program that will certify internationally trained doctors more quickly to work in the province's health system. Premier Tim Houston says starting early next year, a new Halifax-based clinic will assess international medical graduates while providing primary care to about 2,500 patients. Internationally trained doctors will be paired with a dedicated physician assessor who will evaluate their competency. Assessments will take about 12 weeks, replacing a previous approach that could take up to 18 months. The registrar of the College of Physicians and Surgeons says there are many things afoot to boost doctor numbers, but this is the quickest path.
And I recognize the expansion of residency seats. I recognize the development of the faculty in Cape Breton. And those will pay long-term dividends. But in the immediate short term, the only source of more competent physicians are internationally trained physicians.
39 licenses were issued since 2019 under the former Practice Ready assessment model. The Premier says this clinic will get more qualified doctors into the system more efficiently.
In 1 year under this new assessment center, when it's fully functioning, we should be able to issue more licenses than have been issued in the last 5 together.
Once a doctor completes the clinic, they'll sign a 3-year return of service contract to work in the province.
The vice chair of Wine Growers Nova Scotia says she's relieved to hear that the provincial government will not move ahead with a plan to increase subsidies to farm wineries and commercial bottlers based on NSLC sales. That news was delivered today during a meeting members of the farm wine sector had with the Premier and other government officials.
It's been in existence for, I think, about 10 years now. We were still able to grow our market share and grow our industries under that programming as it was. So we feel comfortable that moving forward with future investment focused on Nova Scotia inputs, that we're going to be able to continue that growth.
Members of the farm wine sector launched a protest campaign recently following the government's proposal. They cited an expert report that called for the existing subsidy to be maintained and that any new support be based on an operations contribution to the Nova Scotia economy.
Halifax is calling on the Nova Scotia government to contribute more to housing the homeless population. The winter months are approaching, and the city says it needs help to keep people safe when the temperature drops. Brett Ruskin has the details.
Right now in Halifax, there's around 1,285 people with their name on a list saying that they are experiencing homelessness. Now, that doesn't fully encapsulate the entire homeless issue in Halifax because some people's names just simply aren't on the list. Nevertheless, the city says that the province isn't doing enough to help with homelessness. We heard from the Director of Housing and Homelessness for HRM for the Halifax Regional Municipality yesterday at a meeting before a committee for the City of Halifax, talking about how the homelessness issue puts a strain on all of the different support networks in the region. Have a listen to what he said.
Every single organization that works with people suffering from homelessness, poverty, domestic violence, all of those are at their maximum. And so there are lots and lots of people in need, and we need more help.
And where is that help going to come from? Well, the city wants more from the province. Now, on the provincial side of things, the province says, hey, we're doing a lot already. There's already $9 million or so invested in a tiny home community, so small accommodations that can accommodate 1 or 2 people, 70 people in total in that area, in that project. Another $7 million committed to pallet shelters, so these are single occupancy shelters. The province has purchased 200 of them. Most of them are being installed in the Halifax region, and another $5 million for the Halifax Forum shelter. So that's a shelter space that has been installed and is going to be maintained in a multi-purpose center in the Halifax area. And so the province says that it's doing enough. The city says it needs to do more. We'll see where the balance lies because there's still 150 or so people who are living in tents right now, living accommodations that are going to become all the more difficult once the snow starts to fly, once the temperatures drop, and once winter arrives. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
The St. John to Digby passenger ferry is going to be temporarily out of service starting after Thanksgiving. The MV Fundy Rose will be heading to a shipyard in Quebec for maintenance. It's expected to be out of service from October the 16th until the beginning of December. Every 2 years, the ship goes into dry dock for refitting. It will be lifted out of the water and the entire hull will be inspected, cleaned, and painted. The ferry's shafts and propeller blades will also undergo work, and its interior will get a deep clean.
Some parents are frustrated with growing pains at the new schools in Bedford. West Bedford School and West Bedford High School opened their doors in September of 2023, but they've been dealing with overcrowding ever since. During its first year, HRCE had to install modular classrooms at the two schools, but that wasn't enough to keep up with booming student populations. To mitigate overcrowding at West Bedford School, the grade 7s and 8s were moved to West Bedford High in September. One parent says this has meant crowded hallways and scheduling mishaps for her daughter and other students.
I think the big thing is we need to know how this is going to be prevented next semester, next year. Even this semester, that area is still growing and they are still getting registrations for the school on a daily basis.
A spokesperson with HRCE says it has become increasingly difficult to keep up with student enrollment, especially somewhere like Bedford that's growing in size so quickly. The province recently announced another new school will be coming to the area, but the project could take 5 to 6 years.
There's a new recording studio in Cape Breton. It opened earlier this year and focuses on crystal clear sound and video.
But it's also working to preserve Nova Scotia's original language, Mi'kmaq. Erin Potty reports.
At a small studio in Eskazoni, crew members are editing a drum-making workshop with knowledge keeper Clark Paul. Passing on Mi'kmaq teachings and the language is the primary goal of Wigwam Studios. Studio founder Tom Johnson says this space is the first of its kind in Nova Scotia.
Because we have a lot of stuff in the schools already that's written, we figure we need a place where these sounds can be stored so that if we don't have any speakers in the future, we'll have a database of these sounds that we can rely on to teach our future children.
The province's Mi'kmaq school system estimates there are as few as 3,000 Mi'kmaq speakers in Nova Scotia. Johnson says during the time of residential schools, many in his community were told to stop speaking their language and to be ashamed of it.
Now that's slowly turning, and people are starting to be proud of their language and starting to embrace it and looking forward to speaking it. And the whole goal is to have more speakers than we currently have.
Each week, the studio welcomes elders, knowledge keepers, and Mi'kmaq speakers for recorded lessons. The topics center around traditional medicines, cooking, and even games. The studio's coordinator says helping to preserve the language is a big responsibility.
I love meeting new people. I love, building new connections with elders and stuff. And it just makes it feel good, bringing it back, bringing the language to the community. It's a dying language, and it's something that, needs to be picked up.
Right now, the studio is working with a Sydney-based company on a video game. Gundawiktuk, a Mi'kmaq adventure, includes Nova Scotia voice actors and follows a young Mi'kmaq person on a journey within the spirit world.
We're hoping that, like, the younger generation will take a liking to that and start playing the game and hearing these sounds. Because you don't even really have to study it. All you have to do is subconsciously listen to these sounds. They're embedded, and we're hoping that the language will naturally evolve or take off. Because that's the original way it was taught, was through oral tradition.
The studio is also planning upcoming projects, including Mi'kmaq language lessons, podcasts, and interactive games. Erin Potty, CBC News, Eskazoni.
Bit of a gray evening out there over Halifax Harbour. Ryan's up next with the weather forecast. See you on the other side of the break.
Talking hurricanes during the break there, and you can't help but feel so concerned and worried for the people living on that west coast of Florida.
Oh, and it's so powerful.
Yeah, so since the top of the show, the National Hurricane Center has now upgraded it back to a Category 5 storm. So it weakened temporarily today, but now back to a Category 5 this evening. So this is a very, very powerful storm. It is basically as strong as it gets in terms of storms that develop in the Atlantic and in the Gulf of Mexico. Have a look at the storm, and yeah, you can see the eye just clearly defined. That is a very powerful storm. How powerful? Sustained winds now near 270 kilometers an hour. So it is absolutely ferocious. Now, a couple of things that are really concerning with this storm. Florida often, gets hit with hurricanes. This is not their first brush with a hurricane, but many storms kind of, do pass and move through. They get, sideswiped a lot. Rarely is there a track like this where it is broadside west to east on that Gulf side. And so that is what is really standing out about this one. The Tampa area hasn't been hit directly like this in about 100 years. So this is why officials are so concerned with this making landfall, likely as a very strong Category 3 storm with winds near 200 kilometers an hour. You can see the hurricane warnings in effect. Now, storm surge is going to be a big deal. And this is the latest thinking in the Tampa Bay area in particular. That's a 3 to 5 meter surge. That is 10 to 15 feet. That would exceed what Helene brought. And Helene brought a lot of problems, but this could top that with a new record there. So that's one main concern. Of course, all the debris still left over from Helene, still there, ready to be washed away again. And then the winds are obviously a huge concern again. Tampa, Sarasota down to Fort Myers. This is the area here. Major hurricane strength winds, 175 kilometer per hour winds potentially here in this area. And look at the swath of hurricane force winds, Orlando, all the way down to Melbourne and Naples. So this is going to be a huge swath of damaging winds. And then there's the rain. And widespread 100 to 300 millimeters of rain. Local amounts could see 450 millimeters of rain. And then you think about all that rain trying to get away, and the storm drains and catch basins filled with debris, not only from Helene, but from this storm. And so, yeah, this is going to be a very, very concerning storm. And obviously our thoughts with Florida. We'll keep you posted on all things Milton over the next couple of days. Obviously closer to home here, and we're watching this low pressure system and a new low that's been developing today along this frontal boundary, which has been bringing us the rain, sweeping in from west to east. And you can see that is now pushing up some of the steadier rain towards the Halifax area. Sustained winds in the 20 to even 40 kilometer per hour range in the Caribou Point area. Been seeing some gusts in the 40 to 50 kilometer per hour range, and lace wet winds are going to really gust tonight, upwards of 90 kilometers per hour. So enough for Environment Canada to issue a lace wet wind warning there for tonight into the wee morning hours of tomorrow. Overnight lows near 12 degrees for Cape Breton tonight. We'll see single-digit lows for the mainland, high single digits though, with a bit of a shift to a westerly wind overnight tonight. Note the timing of the rain marching west to east here, and by the time we get to tomorrow morning, some lingering showers for Cape Breton. Mix of sun and cloud for most of the mainland, and then there are those showers to develop tomorrow in the west. So Cape Breton, morning showers, then clearing, and a beautiful afternoon there shaping up. We'll see temperatures into the mid-teens all across the province for tomorrow. Late day risk of a shower, Windsor into Halifax. Afternoon showers pushing in from west to east for western parts of the province. Thursday, the greatest risk of showers is going to be central and eastern areas, particularly through Cape Breton. A bit of a northwest flow here, and you can see the general setup on the other side of this low. Weak little surface low developing here, but on Thursday it is going to be that northwest flow, and we'll just see some of these showers developing in the wake of that main low, which is going to be swirling up towards Newfoundland and Labrador. Eastern shower potential again on Friday for Cape Breton, showers for Saturday, and then you can see as we work our way into Sunday. Not a bad day, and for Thanksgiving Sunday. Monday looks like we'll be inside eating turkey on Thanksgiving Monday. Tom,
okay, we'll plan
proper
for
thing.
that.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thanks,
Thank
Ryan. Coming up, we'll have more from Florida as millions brace for Hurricane Milton's impact.
Welcome back. As we mentioned earlier, millions of people in Florida are on the move, trying to get out of the way of Hurricane Milton.
And officials are warning those in its path that this storm will be catastrophic. Cameron McIntosh reports.
Flying through the eye of the hurricane, forecasters are getting a better sense of Milton's path, churning over the Gulf of Mexico, bearing down on Florida's Gulf Coast, where millions of residents have been told to leave. Traffic now bumper to bumper on highways headed out. In a place where hurricane warnings are part of life, many say this feels different.
I've ridden out all the storms. This would be the first one I'm leaving for.
Milton has already hit parts of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It's predicted to broadside Florida's heavily populated Gulf Coast, pushing up shallow coastal waters into storm surges. In Tampa, possibly up to 5 meters.
I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die.
The president says the federal government is bracing for catastrophe.
This could be the worst storm to hit Florida in over a century. And God willing, it won't be, but that's what it's looking like right now.
Warm air in the Gulf of Mexico is fueling Milton, which is also not meeting resistance from other winds that often weaken hurricanes. A perfect storm, say climate scientists.
In this case, it was extreme rapid intensification, one of the fastest rates of turning into a Category 5 from a tropical storm that we've ever seen in human history.
Now a Category 4, Milton will be the second major hurricane to hit Florida in less than 2 weeks, after Helene, which killed 232 people across 6 states. Shelters are being set up in anticipation of Milton as people further inland stock up. Meanwhile, Helene's debris are only adding to the danger, with fears Milton will just pick it all up again.
All this is going to be pretty much missiles coming through. If it's, the amount of wind that's going through with this hurricane coming in, I'm not staying for this one.
While there's some hope the storm will slow, it's still predicted it will cut right across Florida, entering and leaving as a violent hurricane as millions try to get out of the way. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Trevor Adams is a meteorologist who has worked for CBC in the Maritimes. You may recognize him. He lives in St. Petersburg in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. But Trevor, where are you now?
I'm currently in Fort Lauderdale. I decided to evacuate with the impending hurricane. I wasn't going to take the risk to stick around, so I thought I'd get to somewhere safe.
Yeah, tell me about that decision to leave. How worried are you about your home?
Very worried. I fortunately don't have the obligation to work as a broadcast meteorologist. I teach now. It's my primary job. And so I had the luxury of, getting a day to sort of get my place ready and then get on the road and get out of town. That's how seriously I'm taking this.
How badly damaged was your place or your community by Helene back in September?
Well, I was, describing the scene to some people, in the Maritimes in the wintertime, when you go into the shopping mall parking lots when it snows and they build up those giant snow mounds that you could almost basically ski down. Just imagine that garbage piles that size everywhere throughout the community. It's just devastating.
So how concerning is that, given that, some of that stuff, I guess, could become projectiles? I'm not sure how much of it they got picked up. Because where you're getting the one storm and another one coming right after it, that complicates things.
It does, and there has been no pickup really at this point because they're still, the officials are still assessing what's going on. They're still trying to restore power, and the big concern is the storm surge, which the waters will simply carry that garbage and then float it and redistribute it. So all the cleanup efforts that people have been doing just to get them into the piles to clean up their communities, their efforts could all be just in vain because if we get a strong storm surge, it'll just float that everywhere.
I know Florida has its fair share of hurricanes in the past. Everyone knows that, but this is somewhat unusual, isn't it? That there's these two, they're so big, one right after the other. Can you kind of put that in context for us a little bit?
Well, I think it's a sign of the times. We know that ocean surface temperatures have been, excessively hot, hotter than they have ever been, historically. So that gives us an indication. That's the fuel, the source of these hurricanes, the strength of them comes from that warm water. And so I think that's a sign of the times, what we're seeing. And the other thing we have to remember is that hurricane season although we typically define it going until the end of November, Mother Nature doesn't necessarily have a schedule of when these things are going to happen. And so typically September, October are the busiest months. So it's not surprising that we're seeing these storms right now. What is surprising, though, is the size and strength of the storms.
You've got your camper trailer behind you there, which you have taken to the other side of the state for safety reasons. Mass evacuations underway. How complicated it is to get around there now?
Well, there's two factors you have to take into account. One is it's nearly impossible to get gas in the Tampa Bay area. They've run out. People stock up, and obviously they've gotten on the road. Then you have to contend with traffic. So I worked around the clock last night quite late to prepare my house. And then I got up very early this morning to get on the road. So I apologize for people are probably not used to see me like this, but I'm tired. It's been a long day, and I'm just glad that I finally got here and I was able to set up at some friends that will let me stay.
Well, yeah, and you're in a safe zone now, it would seem. How would you characterize people's mood as this huge storm bears down on Florida now? Are they getting used to this? Do you ever get used to this?
I don't think people get used to it, but there is a sense at some point, what can you do? And the reality sets in. What's important is your personal safety first. You secure as much as you can of your property, and then it's personal safety. But you also have a lot of people who have a lot of attachment to their properties, and they won't leave despite that.
Just quickly before I let you go, has anyone started the insurance process yet from the first storm? I mean, how does that play out for people?
Yes, so all of the insurance companies, the major insurers, have set up sites where people can go and get help, throughout the Tampa Bay area, and that's what they do. And of course, the local, state, and federal officials have also set up sites and programs to help people have access to things like washrooms, laundry facilities, places to stay, shelters have been set up, and so on. So all of that's well put in place for people. But the thing is that they will not couple the claims together. If you have a claim from Helene, then you'll have to file a separate. You have to file a separate claim, that is, with anything that happens from. My goodness, drawing a blank here for a second. It's such a busy day. For Milton.
Well, we can understand why you might be a little preoccupied. Listen, really appreciate that you're safe, Trevor, and do thank you for your time today. Thanks so much.
Okay, no problem. You got it.
Coming up, Israel keeps up the pressure on Lebanon. The Israeli military claims it has killed another key Hezbollah leader. Welcome back. Israel says it has killed one of the possible replacements for the head of Hezbollah. It is also issuing new evacuation warnings in the southern suburbs of Beirut as it expands its ground operations in Lebanon.
Israel says it continues to root out Hezbollah command posts and weapons caches. And now the government of Lebanon is calling on its citizens to help oust the militant group. CBC's Margaret Evans has the latest.
No relief for Lebanon. Israeli airstrikes relentless, both here in the capital Beirut and in the south, where Israel says it's expanding its ground operation. And from the Israeli Prime Minister to the Lebanese people, a warning.
You have an opportunity to save Lebanon before it falls into the abyss of a long war that will lead to destruction and suffering like we see in Gaza.
He said Israel had taken out the likely replacement for the slain Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and the replacement's replacement.
I say to you, the people of Lebanon, free your country from Hezbollah so that this war can end.
Earlier, Hezbollah fired more than 100 rockets at Israel in an hour, some making it through the defense system to hit near Haifa. The militant group's deputy leader, Naim Qassem, also appeared in a dimly lit video to deny Israeli claims of battlefield success. I would like to reassure you our capabilities are fine, he said, and what the enemy said about them being affected is a delusion. But he also backed ceasefire efforts undertaken by Lebanon's interim government without specifically linking them to a ceasefire in Gaza, as Hezbollah leaders have done in the past. Lebanese fears of a wider Israeli ground invasion have grown, along with Israeli military orders that civilians stay away from the coastline and off the water, from the port city of Sidon all the way to the Israeli border. Lebanon's Hezbollah-backed Minister for Public Works and Transportation calls it a big problem.
As you know, we have the port of Sidon. It's a commercial port. So we have several public services there. We have our people that they live there.
Alarm bells over the growing humanitarian impact on Lebanon, already fragile, continue to sound. 900 schools designated as shelters for more than 1 million displaced, already overflowing. Many people in Beirut still sleeping outside with nowhere to go. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Beirut.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is heading to Laos for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit this week. He's trying to position Canada as a bigger player in the region. But as Ashley Burke reports, violence in the Middle East is dominating opinion polls in Southeast Asia, and Ottawa's position on the war is hurting Canada's reputation there.
The Prime Minister's on his way to Southeast Asia to talk trade and diplomatic relations with world leaders. But those talks could be overshadowed by violence in the Middle East.
Gaza will be on the agenda. When you look at opinion polls in the region of all the geopolitical crises in the world, they rate Gaza as #1 preoccupation, even well ahead of concerns in the region.
This expert says Canada has taken a reputational hit, with Muslim-majority countries like Indonesia and Malaysia both vocal supporters of Palestinians.
It's a feeling that they have towards the U.S. and other Western countries as well. There's this narrative of hypocrisy and sort of lack of care for the suffering in Gaza, and that has been really difficult because there's a lot of tension.
She says Trudeau's return to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit is a chance to counter that claim of hypocrisy. Trudeau's Foreign Affairs Minister has been treading carefully.
We want peace and security for Israel in the short, medium term, and long term. And we believe that that peace and security for people can only be achieved through the fact that we're able to find a solution that is true, a two-state solution, where Israelis and Palestinians will be able, in their different states, to live side by side in peace and security.
Trudeau is expected to spend 2 days meeting with world leaders in Laos, where the priority is improving business and trade relations. Then the Prime Minister will head to Germany to talk about another international conflict and reaffirm support for Ukraine's fight against Russia. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal government is introducing measures it says will increase housing across the country. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced new mortgage refinancing options today for homeowners who are adding secondary suites to the property. These proposed reforms would take effect early next year.
The idea here is to make it easier for people to build a secondary suite in their home, for someone to build a basement flat, a garden flat, laneway housing. This is all about gentle density, creating more homes for Canadians to live in. It builds on the secondary suite loan program, which was announced in the budget.
Business leaders from Canada's biggest cities are in Ottawa today sounding the alarm. They're calling on the federal government to help clean up downtowns and make them safe. David Thurton reports.
Their leaders say problems such as addictions, mental health, and homelessness are not just Vancouver or Toronto issues. They're now nationwide problems that have gotten worse since COVID-19.
This was a trajectory we were on, but definitely the pandemic accelerated it. And especially in the last couple of years, as more people are coming back to our downtowns, coming back to commercial main streets, there is real challenges that we're facing on our streets that small businesses are facing day to day, whether they're feeling, how do they keep their employees safe? How do employers keep their workers safe?
The business leaders want to see changes to Canada's bail laws to keep offenders behind bars. Amendments that don't just target violent offenders, but repeat offenders involved in shoplifting and other retail crime. The International Downtown Association Canada cautions, though, that jail is not the only solution.
Jail might not be the answer for a lot of folks. They might do, a short sentence. But then what is the plan? Are they in a state that they can go back into the community and not cause further harm to the community? Or do they need to be in some sort of bridge housing? Do they need other supports when they're released? And I think most Canadians would be shocked by how little care and how little planning goes into post-release.
The group is calling for investments in mental health and addiction supports and also housing. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
A clinical trial is underway in Rwanda to combat an outbreak of a deadly virus in that country. Jennifer Yoon now with what we know about Marburg and the race to contain it.
Hundreds of doses of an experimental vaccine now on the ground in Rwanda, a bid to stop the spread of a deadly virus.
This type of disease, most of the time, if not all the time, they start from hospitals.
This is the country's first Marburg outbreak. 56 confirmed cases and 12 deaths in just 10 days. The virus is closely related to Ebola. Symptoms can include high fever, severe headache, and nausea. At worst, it can cause multi-system organ failure. Fatality rates are as high as 88%, and there are no approved treatments or vaccine. In the past 10 years, there have been outbreaks in Tanzania, Equatorial Guinea, Ghana, and Uganda. In this latest outbreak in Rwanda, most of the people killed are health workers, which is why healthcare workers will now receive the experimental shot as part of a clinical trial from a US-based nonprofit promoting global vaccine access. The vaccine already shown to be safe for humans.
It is really a Herculean achievement.
This doctor, who survived an Ebola infection, calls the pace incredible and hopefully life-saving.
It means a lot knowing that there is global solidarity and a movement to really do something pretty unprecedented, like getting vaccines into a place so quickly.
It's a similar process that led to the development of Ebola vaccines.
As terrible as these outbreaks are and as devastating as this infection is, it still is an opportunity to do good for this world by determining if these products actually work.
Previous outbreaks have been contained with measures like contact tracing. Experts are optimistic the outbreak will be contained effectively and that the risk level for Canadians is low for now. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
A Canadian professor from the University of Toronto is one of this year's winners of the Nobel Prize in Physics. Geoffrey Hinton is known as the godfather of artificial intelligence. And he told the CBC that AI could soon be more intelligent than humans.
Fairly soon, probably within the next 20 years, we're going to develop things more intelligent than us. And we've never been there before. We have no idea what it's going to be like. And we should be working hard now on how to make sure it doesn't take control away from people.
Hinton is sharing the prize with John Hopfield of Princeton University. The Nobel Committee says their work gives us a completely new way to use computers using artificial intelligence to help us meet the challenges facing the modern world.
Canada's main stock index sank further into the red today, weighed down by retreating oil prices, while U.S. stocks were up. Here's a look at how the markets did today as we head to break. Back to wrap things up on a day when there's been lots of weather to talk about, that's for sure.
Yeah, you've been really honing in on the hurricane, so
yeah, that's
lots
right.
to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. We'll circle to that in a sec. Want to get to our viewer picture because that is, of course, a very popular part of this show.
Uplifting, as usual.
Yes, we need it.
And we do. Have a look at this. So we're going to zoom in on Peggy's Cove, and again, this spot gets taken lots of pictures of Peggy's Cove, but
Oh, wow, isn't that nice?
tough to top that one right
Peaceful,
there.
isn't it? Lovely.
Gorgeous.
Like the red on the light there, too.
Yeah,
isn't it?
me too. And thanks to Sherlyn for sharing that. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. The inbox has been nice and full. Okay, we got to circle back to Milton in case you're just joining us. It is back to a Category 5 storm, so has strengthened today. Winds, sustained winds, 269 kilometers an hour. Just an incredibly powerful storm. The good news is it will weaken as it rolls toward the Florida coastline. The bad news is it will make landfall as a major hurricane, likely a very strong Category 3 storm. And as we mentioned earlier, just the track of this one, again, not a brush, not kind of a side swipe where, a car turns at the last second. This is going to be broadside hit to that Gulf Coast, and that is why this storm is going to be so dangerous, pushing that wall of water into the coast of Florida. And the storm surge is just going to be incredibly damaging, especially for the Tampa Bay area, where it could be historic. So our thoughts, obviously, with the folks of Florida trying to prepare for that, and as they clean up from Helene. Locally tomorrow, we are looking at that chance for showers clearing tomorrow morning in Cape Breton. Then a great day. The mainland looking like a great start, and then we're going to be seeing some showers moving in the Tri-County area, the South Shore, and into the Valley region. And a quick look at that 7-day, and you can see we've got some showers over the next few days as temperatures look very mid-October-like.
Nothing we can't handle. Okay, Thanks so much, Ryan. A sight to behold over the skies in New Mexico for the 52nd annual Balloon Fiesta. Hundreds of them in all shapes and sizes floating above Albuquerque this week. Take a look at this.
Time-lapse images reveal the colorful spectacle coming to life in the early morning hours. You can see 500 balloons lying flat on the ground until launch time.
Once inflated to full size, they rise from the ground to float in the air. Organizers say the popular festival is the largest gathering of hot air balloons in the world.
And that is a spectacle for sure. That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.